Okay. All right. So I am here with Laura. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
And we are going to do another kind of interview where Laura shares her story. You guys probably saw that I shared Alice's story a couple of weeks ago, and Laura shared an amazing post in the Intuitive Eating Challenge Facebook group about how far she has come. And I reached out to her and asked her if she would be willing to share her story just so that you guys can, women can get another perspective. And Laura was really excited. So, thank you so much for being open to talking about your journey. I know that we've all been through a lot with food in our bodies. It's not always the easiest thing to talk about. So, thank you for being here.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, yeah. So, let's start off with just you telling us a bit about, your story with food in your body and where you
Sure,
were with all of that stuff.
definitely. So I grew up with both my parents who love me very much. I want to preface with that. But they have always both been had various disordered relationships with eating. So my mom has always been on a diet since I can remember. And, just always complaining about her body. So growing up with that, I remember one of my first earliest memories is being told we're not allowed to have ice cream in the house anymore at like 4.
Mm.
And then on the other side is my dad, who I think he equates thinness with being healthy. I'm just going to think that's what it is. But so he would feel, totally fine with coming up to me and being like, "How have you gained weight?" And I really think you should work out more, and just making comments about my body growing up, and monitoring what I ate. Like if I ate too much, he'd stop me. And so just I, from a very young age, had a very was very aware that eating and what you ate kind of had a emotional connotation to it and how people perceived you. And so it just started a really disordered relationship for me with food. I remember like late elementary sneaking desserts and
Mm-hmm.
not wanting anyone to know, not wanting my parents to catch me. And so, that's just not right there is not a good place to be.
Yeah.
And so, and then when in high school, so I grew up with this kind of disordered eating relationship and sneaking desserts, but I was really big into athletics. So I think that's what kind of kept me healthy overall. But in high school, I remember, I don't even remember quite what triggered it, but I just made the decision like, this is the year I'm going to be thin, and my parents are going to be so proud of me because I got super skinny. And I totally just realized I could stop eating and got really, really thin. And I remember my dad being like, "Oh, you look really good,"
Mm.
and here I was like miserable,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
barely able to have the energy to function and just depressed, exhausted. And then from there, it was like, my body just couldn't handle it. So went to binge eating, and then I'd be like, okay, now I'm gonna start my new diet on Monday, and then maybe I'd last 2 weeks, and then the next time I'd last 1 week, and the next time I'd last, like anyone who's been a repetitive dieter, at least from my experiences, is that each diet lasts less and less
Yeah.
time, and you get more and more miserable, and you hate it,
Yeah.
and the binges get worse. So okay, long to my backstory, but um, during that whole time, I like met my husband, I got married, and I think and had kids, and I was still struggling. And I think as a parent, you really get aware of what you could pass on to your children, and really makes you want to. Get healthy. And I mean, you want to get healthy for yourself anyways, but it's just like a magnifying glass on your
Yeah.
issues. Um, so I remember one night I was just like looking through the internet, and I found your website, and it was just so refreshing to hear someone say like, "Listen, I've been there, and this is where I'm at." And I remember just reading through all your old blog posts, and it was so powerful, and just nice because I think the weird thing about body image and disordered eating is people don't talk about it. It's like this like secret shame that no one talks about. It's
Yeah.
totally fine to talk about how you don't like your body, and it's totally fine to talk about going on a diet, but it's not fine to talk about, all the emotional things that come along with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just really refreshing for me. So that's kind of led me into, looking into intuitive eating. And I think that day I signed up for your intuitive eating challenge. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, one of my favorite things about it is I love the challenge itself, but I also love the like Facebook group that you created and having other women just hear about their journey and my journey. And when I first started the challenge, it was, I think I'd heard of intuitive eating before I found your website from because I had gone to different counselors in the past to try to work through my food eating issues. And um, I'd gotten the book Intuitive Eating and I read it, but I didn't know how to make that part of my life. I
Mm,
think the biggest reason being is that I was still holding on to the fact that I needed to be thin.
yeah.
And, that's a real, if you can't
Yeah.
get past that, it's really difficult to do intuitive eating.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second because I think that's such a good point. And yeah, I know that you mentioned that you had like read the book or gotten the book before,
Right.
and you were like, it just didn't click for you at that time. And that was mainly because you couldn't fathom the idea of like potentially not losing weight, or you just really were
Right.
still very weight focused. And so until you were
Yes.
able to like put that on the back burner and move past that, you weren't really able to implement any intuitive eating principles. So how did you, because I think that's something that so many, I mean, I hear it every day. I'm so afraid of losing or of gaining weight. I'm so afraid of gaining weight. If I actually, let the rules go and listen to my body, aren't I just going to like gain all this weight and I can't? And that's so scary. And I get that because
Right.
I've been there, you've
Hmm.
been there.
Right.
So, how did you kind of get past that hang up so that you were able to move in this direction?
I think for me, it was the point of where the pain of not changing was too great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it gets to the point where you're like, I just can't live like this anymore. And
Yeah.
that's how I really felt. Like, I felt like, I mean, I wouldn't say suicidal, but
Yeah.
just like I didn't want to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's not my personality. And that really allowed to hit rock bottom, made me realize, like, I cannot keep living like this. This is not sustainable for me. This is not healthy for me. This is not the way I want to live my life.
Mm.
I mean, even looking back now, I'll look at pictures of myself from like my wedding or from, having my first child when they were just a baby. And I remember like what I weighed, what was on my mind about my weight, and it like clouded everything. And I think I just needed to get to the point where like that wasn't any way to live. And I think what also helped is I actually did diet down to like not in high school, but later on, I dieted down to a really, really, really thin weight, and I was miserable. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just so like thin people are not happy people, And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the lie that our society tells us all the time is that if you're thinner, you will be happier, and that really made me realize like no, that comes from inside of me, and I think, yeah, just hitting that rock bottom piece was what allowed me to realize like I would rather gain weight and have a healthy, functioning relationship with food than stay where I'm at now and, be miserable.
And what was the like the hardest part of where you were at? Was it that you were always thinking about food? Was that you were always thinking about your weight? Was it that you
Mhm.
just were confused about food? Like if you think back to those times where you just didn't want to get up in the morning, like what was it that
Right.
was so painful about it?
I think for me, what was so painful was I would just binge eat and like I diet for like maybe a couple days and it would go great. And I'm so proud of myself. I'm, staying clean eating or whatever. And then I would binge. And if anyone's ever experienced emotional eating or binge eating, there's just such shame around that. And
Yeah, you're just like, what did I just? It's just, yeah. Oh my God. I mean, I know. Yes. Go
yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
So I remember just like waking up in the morning being like, and it drops your self esteem down and it drops your self
Yes.
confidence down.
Yes.
And, that confidence affects every area of your life. Because if you don't have self confidence, it plays out in your relationship with like with my spouse, with my husband, with my kids, with my job. And, for me, it was just like, I can't keep feeling like this. Like, this is a terrible way to live. Yes, I was also frustrated about always thinking about my weight, always thinking about food, but it was more the like emotional pain
Mm-hmm.
that I'd experienced that happened always. Like, my body could not stay on a restrictive
Yeah,
diet.
it gets to be like a daily occurrence at that
It
point.
really
It's not
was.
like you're dieting for a month and then having one binge. It's like
No,
at that point it gets to be like you're trying one thing one day and then binging and another thing then
Yeah,
it's just it gets to be such a rapid up and down where you're like, okay, this
it
is
really
can't do it.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't even like to talk about it. It's just
I
terrible.
I know.
Yeah.
It's tough. It was, yeah, like I always look back at that time in my life and it's just, it's hard. It's hard to look back at it because it was
Hmm.
like a very painful time. And I think so many people can relate to that. It's not just about food and your struggle with
Right.
food. It's impacts everything. It impacts your
Right.
whole life, like every day of your life. And yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
That's,
I know. I mean, it just kills me to think people are out there living like that because I feel like now where I'm at, now I'm so much happier and my self-confidence is so much better. And I mean, just to be able to share, just to help one person is motivating enough.
yeah, which you will, which you will. Okay, and I do want to get to where you are now, but first I want to hear a little more about. So you found the intuitive eating
Mm.
challenge. You had like heard of intuitive eating before. You started kind of down this path, and what was that like for you to kind of make that transition to stop dieting and start
Yeah.
listening to your body?
I think for me, the biggest things that helped along with that is one, getting rid of the scale. I had to literally get rid of it and not have it in the house anywhere. And two, I got rid of all my dieting books. I went on Instagram, unfollowed anyone that had to do with dieting. I mean, I just really tried to treat myself as almost like a project where like I was like, cushioning and making a protective boundary around myself so that I just
Yeah,
was, because I was so in the diet culture for so long that I almost needed to like create an environment where it was not an option. And so that was huge for me. And then I think the other thing was is to really take a step back and ask myself why. Like, why is being thin so important to me? What does that mean for me? And that really dug into like my parent issues and wanting my dad's love and wanting his approval. But why do I need his approval? And
mm,
I'm 36 years old. I'm married with children.
mm,
Why do I care what my parents think? And it was just really good for me to ask that why and to really dig deep and go beyond that because before that I just been like, oh, I always want to be thin. That's it. I just want to be thin. And
you were just
to
like on
really ask,
autopilot with that belief.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I just believed that. And, one other thing that helped me too is I was thinking of like all the people in my life that I love. And I was like, do I love them because they're thin? Because ultimately that's what I realized is I wanted to be loved and I equated thinness with love. And I'm like, I don't care if any of those people, thin, big, whatever, like grow blue hair, orange hair, I don't care. Like I just love them for who they are and how they make me feel. And being always focused on your body and your weight, how can you really love other people? And that was another thing that was really convicting for me was like, okay, I've been focusing on all this, but does this make me a good wife, a good mom, a good daughter, a good friend? No, it doesn't. It makes me always thinking a little bit about some, there's always something I'm thinking about outside of the moment I'm in right now. So, yeah.
yeah. So really asking yourself those questions of like taking a
Yeah.
step back and reassessing your beliefs about happiness and
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
And that's so important because yeah, at the core, I always say this, like at the core of wanting to lose weight or be thin, it's about love. So much of what we do and our behaviors are about love. And
Right.
we're just trained and we don't even realize that that's what we're doing. We don't
Right.
realize that that's just what we're seeking. But when we can take a step back and have awareness about it and then sort of challenge like our way of thinking and our beliefs, it can open up a whole new world for us.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And so what was it like actually like to stop diet like with food, just like with food? Like you
Yeah.
wake up one day and you're like, "Oh my God, I'm not dieting anymore." Like what was it
Yeah.
actually like to start eating in a way that was more free and did you have
Yeah.
hangups about that? Were you like still kind of calorie counting in your head or like
Yeah.
did you feel guilty going out and eating like ice cream for the first time? I mean, what was that actually like?
So I'd say the first week or so, I was loving it. I was like, freedom, and probably I didn't have any problems the first week. In fact, if anything, I was like, yeah, oh, like I'm not hungry, but that looks really good, so I'm going to eat it. I
Yeah.
mean, it was almost like after years of being so strict, it was like, I just, the rebelliousness and the freedom of it all felt wonderful. But
Yeah.
then, you start to, and I don't know if this happens with everyone, but for me, then it starts like, I remember one of my binge food options was donuts. So one of the first things I did was buy a giant box of donuts, and I literally had a donut for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner for like 5 days. I was like,
Mm.
I'm going to eat donuts until I don't want to eat them anymore. And
Yeah.
all I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself the freedom to eat them, but just make sure I'm hungry and stop when I'm comfortable. And I kind of went through that with all my trigger foods.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
exactly what yeah, that's great.
yeah. Because I was like, you know what? I know I've eaten enough vegetables to last me a lifetime because
Yeah.
some days I don't, so I just did not let the health thing or any of those pieces follow through. I just really wanted to make food with no good food, no bad food, no healthy food, no not healthy food. Just take away all moral issues around it and just keep eating it. So I'd say the first week of like doing the intuitive eating, I loved. And then it kind of gets to the point where you're like feeling a little sick and maybe you're having, the newness of it all wears off a little bit and you're like, okay, am I still, I felt like uncomfortable. Like, oh gosh, yeah, it's okay to do this for a week, but am I going to eat donuts every day for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Just that kind of, and what does that mean? So I definitely struggled, I'd say a few weeks in. But I really tried to make, one of the things that I realized was really lacking from my life was self compassion and self care. So I really tried to do something nice for myself every day. And I also really, it sounds weird, but I started running, and running really helped me appreciate my body, just that it can move,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't running for weight loss. It wasn't running for anything other than almost like, wow, see, no matter what size my body is, it can run and it can do great
Mm.
things. And this is amazing. And so it kind of took away that size factor.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was definitely not easy. And I think with anybody on an intuitive eating challenge, just from hearing people from the Facebook group, you have your moments where you're like doing so good, and then like something comes up that stresses you out or whatever triggers you to, or like a comment made by a friend or a parent or something, and that can make you kind of spiral back down. But I knew for me, I didn't have any other choices. Like
Yeah.
wasn't going to ever go back on a diet again. I
Yeah.
had made that decision, really firm. And so for me, it was making those choices every day and in that moment. I think I really started living more moment to moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I feel like eating now? And, oh, that was strange that I ate 10 cookies. I wonder why I did that.
Mm.
Oh, because, like really pausing and, yeah, taking time to be gentle but kind, but ask myself those questions like, what does that mean?
Right. And that's a really good segue to the next thing I was going to ask you about, which is, we talked a little bit about binging and how hard that was. And,
Mm-hmm.
for anyone who's experienced that, it's really tough. So I remember in my intuitive eating journey, there were still moments where I would binge, and it took time for that to go to the point where now it doesn't happen anymore. But how did you handle when you did eat 10 cookies still, or when you did
Right.
binge? Like, what were the biggest things that you did that helped you kind of stay on that trend of still having them like decrease
Right.
over time?
I think for me, the biggest thing was making the decision that the next day after a binge, I wasn't going to be mean to myself. I wasn't going to berate myself. I was going to just say, be really loving, kind to myself. Like, oh, why were you sad? Are you okay? Just treat myself how
Mm,
I would treat a friend or my child who had a tough
I
day.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that really helped. And then the second thing I think really helped is I wouldn't force myself, but I would really the next morning say, what are you hungry for? And make sure no matter what it was, like I didn't have any retribution for that. Like I wasn't going to not eat the next day, or I wasn't going to exercise hard. I made the decision like tomorrow you had a tough night. So why don't you sleep in, and in the morning if you want some pancakes, I tried to make it almost just how you would care for someone you love. And
Mm.
I think that's a thing as a woman I struggle with, taking care of myself. I can take care of other people, but that's hard.
Oh my God, I
So,
love that.
yeah,
I love that. It's so rare to hear, just the voice that you're saying that you talk to yourself in. It's like, how often do we really, I mean, I didn't do that for most of my life. I do it now, but it still feels like almost foreign to talk to
right.
myself in that voice, because we
Hmm.
just spent most of our lives beating ourselves up,
Yeah.
and I think I love that you kind of gave examples of that. I think that's going to really hit home for women because I think most people are probably like, oh, I never talk to myself like that. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I think it's funny how like we can be so loving and kind to other people in our lives, but when it comes to ourselves, we're just like to hear the internal talk that we say to ourselves. We're just so mean.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so it sounds like some key things that really helped you during that time were throwing the scale away,
Hmm.
letting yourself have all of your like trigger foods
Hmm.
that like the donuts and going through that and saying like, okay, I'm just going to eat donuts. And I think I have to ask because I know people are probably wondering what ended up happening with like let's just say the donuts. Like did you after a few weeks did your body like balance out there and how do you treat donuts now?
Yeah, so donuts now have fully lost their power over me. And I mean, back in the day, if someone brought a donut, I couldn't even focus on what people were saying. Like I would just be like thinking, like I remember I was at a work function and everyone got a donut and then there's the whole like box left of like 10 donuts. And after the meeting and they're like, we're gonna go put these in the kitchen. I'm like, okay, I'll take them to the kitchen. And I'm like grabbing like six of them, because I was totally not following whatever I was following at the time. And so anyways, I ate donuts for like 2 weeks straight, not joking, started actually getting sick of them and was like, I remember the first morning that I woke up and I was like, I don't want one of those this morning. Like my tummy hurts. Like I can still eat it if I want it. Like I totally gave myself that permission, but I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
I just don't want it. And it was so weird to me. And I was like, but I'm going to keep them just in case by lunchtime I do want one. So,
yeah.
I really wanted to make sure that I didn't feel restricted in any way. And I remember, I think for the first time after, I was like, I really want some scrambled eggs, but um, at least for me, one of the hardest things about intuitive eating was being okay letting in what I would call diet food back into my life. I didn't seem to have as much trouble eating trigger foods because I knew I needed to get to the point where they weren't triggered, but I almost had trouble in the beginning not allowing myself to truly ask myself, what do you want?
Mm.
And to be okay with that. Um, so anyways, donuts, I can have them around the house forever and it's not a problem for me. It's crazy. It's amazing.
Mm.
I have never done this before, but I have junk food in my pantry all the
Mm.
time. And I have like ice cream that goes bad and I forget about food. I
Mm.
could not, I mean, the first time that I realized that I'd forgotten about a dessert was like blew my mind.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, it's just great. Things go
yeah.
bad. I don't know. It's amazing.
I'm so happy to hear that because I always
Yeah.
get the question from people like, should I just not have, should I just not keep ice cream in the house or should I just get rid of all these things? And I'm like, no, like you don't want
Yeah.
to live your whole life feeling like you can't have certain foods in your house. Like that's not, something's going on there. And so
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you just said that you can have all these things in your house and you just feel
Yeah.
okay around them and you have them if
Yeah.
you want them and you don't and they're just
Yeah.
normal foods.
Yes. And I've noticed too,
Amazing.
it comes and goes with my hormonal cycle. So
Yeah.
certain times of the month I really want sugar. And other times of
Mm.
the month I'm go weeks without sugar. So it's awesome. I love it. It feels so freeing and I never thought it was possible for me to have a house that had junk food in it, quote unquote junk food, because I don't even consider it junk food. It's just food, but things that I would have considered junk food in my house, and it's not a problem or a concern. And yeah, I love it.
Oh
I'm,
my
I'm so excited
gosh.
about
I'm
it.
so happy for you. That's so awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about what it's like now. So you have junk food in your
Yeah,
house, you feel normal around that stuff. What does it feel
yeah,
like? What does it feel like in terms of how you see your body, how you treat your body, how you treat food? What is
right.
life like now, kind of on the other side of this?
Yeah, so well, like I said, I don't weigh myself, and I think I definitely did gain weight just because of how my clothes felt
Mm-hmm.
in the first beginning of intuitive eating, and I think my body kind of settled out to below where I was before I even started intuitive eating. So I know a lot of people ask about that. But tomorrow it might go bigger again, and that's okay. That's the
Mm,
amazing thing about it is I don't care.
mm,
Um, and I think that's the goal of intuitive eating is that you love your body no matter what size it is, what stage it's in, you know. So right now, my body. there are points in my body that I'm like, funny. That's interesting. It's maybe not what I would pick for the perfect body in my brain, but like I love my body. And I think one of the things that help me is like in the morning when I'm, naked, maybe this is too much information, but I'll just
Nothing's
like
TMI.
I'll just like hug myself like, oh, I love myself. And try to really appreciate myself like, oh, I'm like shorter and I'm curvier and isn't that nice? And I think we like it would be a ridiculous statement if someone was like, you know what, Laura, even though you have size 7 shoes, you should really wear size 9 and make your
Mm.
feet big. I mean, that's crazy talk, right? But yet with our bodies, we're like, oh, we should be this size and we should be this weight. And that doesn't even make sense because we all are made differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just appreciating the body that you're made in but more than that, caring more about your soul
Mm.
above all that. And I think that was the piece that I really needed to get for intuitive eating to stick for me was that it was not a body issue, it was a soul issue.
Mm.
And I was, you know, trying to get love by my body. And yet that's such a pointless endeavor when really I needed to learn how to love myself first.
Mm.
And I needed to be able to, live a life that I loved. And I
Mm.
think that's been a huge thing for me too. So that my body doesn't even really matter.
Yeah. And did you, and I know you actually mentioned this a little bit before we talked and what you wrote to me. What did you do for your soul and like that whole living a life you loved thing that kind of made your life about more than just your body? Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
more about that.
So a couple things. One, I quit a job that I'd hated for like 8 years. And
I'm so
I,
sorry if you hear horns honking. There's
oh
like
no, you're fine. Oh, sorry. My husband's coming and our cat just jumped in here.
no worries.
um, so I quit a job that I hadn't liked for like 8 years. And I don't think I would have had the self confidence to do that beforehand. So that was huge. I really took stock of my life, like asking myself, okay, what are things that I love about my life and what are things I don't love? And how can I change them? And I think when I was in the throes of dieting and restricting and binging, I didn't have any room or space to ask myself those questions ever. And so it was really eye opening to be like, I have so much space in my brain now that I'm not calorie counting or thinking about the next diet or planning my food or, weighing myself. It was amazing. And so I changed my job. That was one of the first things I did. I do things now that I never did. Like yesterday, I took a bath in the middle of the day on a Saturday with a face mask,
Mm-hmm.
and it was amazing. I read a book. I
Mm.
just try to take care of myself like I would if I had someone I love staying with me. I'd want to take care of them. Another thing I do is I don't just eat food to eat food. Like I want to taste good. Like I
Mm.
won't just eat vegetables because they're there. I
Mm.
want, Brussels sprouts with bacon on them or something. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, but like I want to be something I'm excited about. I don't want to just I spent too many years eating things just because I thought I should, and now I want to eat things because they sound good, and that's really freeing.
Is that one of your guiding if you were to if someone were to say like how do you approach food? Would you say that it's like I just go for things I'm excited about or that sound good? Is that generally the way you think about it?
I do, I really do. I try to pick things that, like, so donuts, right? They're not like the most. We'll go back to my donut example. They're not like gourmet food, right? But for me, they were a trigger food. But now I don't want necessarily a donut. Like last night, I had this like amazing triple tiramisu, like decadent dessert. Like if I'm gonna eat something really yummy, I want it to be yummy, I guess. So
Mm.
I know it sounds really strange, but because I think with dieting, we're so used to people telling us what to eat that for me, I don't want like grocery store sushi. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I
Mm-hmm.
want like the really good sushi.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a canned soup that tastes not that great. I want like homemade, yummy soup that's amazing and I'm excited to eat.
Mm.
So, yeah, I guess that is a guiding principle in terms of like how I choose what I'm going to eat.
Mm. Gosh, it sounds like you're just in a place of just self-care to the max, like in
I
every
am.
way. And it's just so awesome to hear because, yeah, when we're like, before you were just like dieting, that's all you could think about, and all of your self worth and your happiness and your love was attributed to your weight and what you looked like. And now like it's just self-care and like your love for yourself is literally
Yeah.
oozing out of you. And it's just so amazing to see and to hear. And oh my God, it just makes me so like filled up and happy to hear that you
Aw.
have that relationship with yourself now. It's just really,
Yeah.
really inspiring and beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have to make up for all those years that I treated myself so terribly, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the other day I took a day off from work and I just stayed home in my jammies and watched Gilmore Girls all day, and it was like the best day ever. And
That sounds like the
I
best
just
day
think,
ever.
yeah, it kind of was the best day. I just think, for women, especially, like I said, being a mom and a wife and treating myself so terribly for years, I just think, gosh, self-care is so important. And when I hear women tell me like, oh, I binged, and they're just being so hard on themselves, it just makes my heart break, because nobody ever changes. Like if I yell at my children, they might change because they're scared of me, but that's not how I want them to live their life. Like I want them to live their life in a way that they're like, well, mom really loves me and she wants the best for me, and I need to take care of myself and take care of myself the way my mom wants to take care of me. I mean,
Hmm.
I think it's just putting ourselves in that childlike position.
Hmm. Yeah, we
Is
all need we all need to be mothered in our lives by ourselves first.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's just kind of close with I'd love for you to give women who are in your shoes that you were in before. There's
Yeah.
lots of them, lots and lots and lots. Let's say like top three pieces of advice
Okay.
for how, if they want to get to where you are today, what are the
Right.
biggest things that you think you want them to know that really helped you that you feel like might help them?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say create an environment in which you can be successful. So get rid of the scale, get rid of your food dieting books, get rid of magazines, clean up your Instagram, clean up your Facebook, really know who your trigger people are. Like for me, I had to kind of break away a little bit in my relationship with my parents for a while. Like we're back to
Mm,
hanging out now normally, but I just couldn't be around someone. I couldn't be around my dad who would say something to me about my weight. I just
mm,
knew I was too new and trying to figure this out.
mm,
So I'd say create that environment that is going to allow you to be successful. And along with that environment, implement things that make you happy.
mm,
Because if you don't do that, then when you have a rough day, it's going to, like, in some ways for me, dieting and all that was a crutch, emotional crutch. Like, if I was stressed out or overwhelmed, I could use that as my crutch to kind of make things easier. And now I have other things in my life that are my quote unquote take care of
yeah.
mechanisms, And so I'd say be thinking, like, write a list, like what makes you happy, like walking in the sun or eating lunch outside or, whatever that is, and start incorporating that daily, not
Mm,
once a month, not
mm-hmm,
even once a week, but like once to twice a day at least. Do
mm,
something that brings you joy, that
mm,
has nothing to do with your body or your weight or what you're eating. So the environment thing I think is number one for me. And then the number two thing I think is trust the process. I know it's so easy to be like, oh, because with dieting, how many times do we think we just have to find the right diet? And I think it's easy to do that with intuitive eating. Like, oh, well, maybe intuitive eating just isn't for me. Intuitive eating is for everyone.
mm,
And you have to trust the process, and you have to be open enough to give yourself fully to the process. You can't be like, well, I'll do it part way, but I'll still weigh myself, or I'll, you know, listen to my hunger and I'll listen to my fullness, but I won't ever take time to sit down and take care of myself and eat a nice meal, but I'll just stuff food in my stomach and just do the fullness and hunger piece. Or, like I think people cut and paste what they want to take out of it. And I think do the whole thing, trust the process, give yourself a full year. What are you going to lose? After
mm.
the end of the year, if you're like, you know what? This was the worst decision I've ever done. Fine, go back to what you've done before. It's not like it won't be there. But give yourself a full year. I think it's when people give themselves a week or two or even a month. Like for me, it's been over a year now and I'm still learning. And I think I just needed to be fully committed to be able to do that. And then did you want to say that?
I was going to ask you that question of how long you feel like it really took for you
Yeah.
to kind of get to where you are now. Like, what would you say? Did it take a year or did it take less than that? Or,
I'd say about 6 months, I
okay.
was in a way better place. But 6 months and now I'm in an even better place. So
Yeah.
it's been, I mean, it's been a year, almost a year and a half now. And I love where I'm at. And I've gotten in a better place every month. So the longer I'm doing it, the happier I am. But 6 months, I think minimum for me is
Yeah.
where I started to be like, okay, I think this is making a difference in my life.
Yeah. Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was like, I have to ask her that in the back of my head.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, cool. And so then, like, what would you say maybe is the third piece of advice? So the environment piece, trust the process and give yourself time. And then what's maybe one more thing that you would give people?
Yeah. I think for me, the third piece is probably do the inside work. So you're trusting the process, you're creating a great environment, but you also have to do the inside work. There's a reason why you're using dieting and as a crutch. And why is that? And I know it's uncomfortable to go there. I mean, I spent a lot of time journaling about it and thinking about it, and it wasn't comfortable for me, but I don't think I would have grown if I hadn't done that.
Mm,
So I just would say, dig deep, ask yourself why, and just keep asking yourself why. I had to keep going, so why do I want my dad to love me, even more than that, and why do I feel like I'm unlovable? And it's just those whys, and it wasn't comfortable for me to say that, and it finally to get to the point was like, also, what's the worst could happen? So what if I gain 100 million pounds
mm,
and my dad tells me he doesn't love me? What's the worst? I'm like, well, I'd still have an amazing husband, amazing children who I love. I'd still be alive, which is
mm,
amazing in itself and breathing. Like it's not the end of the world, and I think it's that deep inside work that it's hard to do, but if you don't do it, I don't know how you could be successful with learning to be an intuitive eater because I think everybody's addicted to something or everyone uses a crutch for something for the emotional work. And everyone here is, probably listening. It's food and
mm-hmm.
it's dieting and it's body image.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that we, tried to condense this into like a half an hour. And there's
Yeah.
1,000 ways that we could have gone with this. But is there anything else that you feel like you want women to know or that you feel like you want to share or anything else
Yeah.
before we close up?
I just want to say that I guess I want to encourage everyone. Like, my life is the best it's ever been. And it has nothing to do with my size or what I'm eating. I'm just happy. And my
Mm,
life is freedom. I don't freak out if I go to a party, and I don't freak out if I go to a restaurant. And when I know this sounds silly, but I had a bunch of people over at my house and they all brought all this food and it was just amazing. We had great conversations and then they left with all the food and it just wasn't a big deal. And that would have the whole, like, if 2 years ago, I would have been sitting there talking to them, thinking about the food, thinking about them leaving the food, either binging on it or restricting it and throwing it away. And I would have had all these things, but here I was with my friends having a great conversation. And so I just want to encourage people that you can get there. Like, I cannot believe I'm living like this. I really thought I had a food problem
mhm,
and I didn't. I just didn't know the right way to live life. I had a diet problem. That was what my
mhm,
problem was.
mhm, mhm. Mm. Amazing. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. And is there anywhere that they can like find you? Are you on like social media or anything if they want more information? Or
Yeah.
if not, they can just comment maybe on the blog post and maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm on Facebook. I'm part of the Jamie Mendel's Intuitive Eating Challenge
Mhm.
Facebook group, which I love. And then I am on Instagram, Laura Ilsa. So you can look me up. But
Cool.
otherwise, yeah, write a comment. I'd
Awesome.
love to talk to people.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much for being
Yeah.
here.
Thanks, Jamie. I just want to say thank you for all the work you do. I hope you know what a difference you make in people's lives.
Oh, thank you. And you're so welcome. And like, this is just, this makes it all worth it for me. So thank you so much for sharing
Yay.
your story.
Thank you.